All right, welcome back to the Chasing the Natty podcast, a college football fantasy podcast. I'm your host, Xavier. Alongside me is my co-host, Jared. On today's episode, we'll be recapping week 3 of the college football season and discuss waiver wire winners and losers. So, week 3 has finally ended, and now we are into Sunday night where a lot of big games are happening. But that's neither here nor there because we don't care about the NFL. We care about college, where the real things happen, where the stars are born and made. Like I said earlier in our introduction, I said we're going to be doing a recap. So without further ado, I think we should get in it. But first, I would like to introduce my co-host, Jared, and ask him how he's doing. How are you doing today, Jared, on this lovely Sunday evening with all this hurricane rain that we're getting in Georgia?
I'm doing fine. I'll be honest. I haven't even noticed it's raining outside. That's how oblivious I am to the outside world.
It is terrible. I had to drive on the highway to get back home to do this. I was like, dear God, I need to turn down turn down the volume of the music and just focus. And I was like, I need to make it home. I need to make it home safely.
Yeah, Xavier gave me a call. He's like, Jared, I'm literally going to die out here. I can't do the podcast. And I'm like, no, you get your ass in that car and you get back here. Yeah. We're recording this podcast.
I had to break hearts and be like, sorry, Grandma. Sorry for Sunday dinner. I have to go home and record a podcast with my host. So thanks for breaking my grandmother's heart. No, it's fine. She knows I leave on Sunday nights anyway, so it was all good.
Nah, it's all good. Anyway,
week 3.
Like you were saying, yeah, week 3. Completely ignored NFL today. I'll be honest, I have not watched a second of NFL football today because college is better. This past week,
yeah, absolutely.
This past week was awesome.
It's a lot.
This might be one of the best seasons of college football I have seen in so long, because this is probably for the first time in several years, things just don't feel chalky. It really does feel like any given Saturdays, anybody could lose to anybody.
This is the parity we've been wanting for years.
It really has been. And like you said, there's just been so many good matchups here. We got a lot to get to. I sent Xavier a list of different things we could talk about tonight. And it was the first time I was just help me narrow this down, because I can't decide what we should talk about. There are so many different storylines to talk about. So like Xavier said, we should probably get into it. So Xavier, do you want to introduce our first game we're going to talk about here?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have for our number 1 overall reaction, we have Alabama survives the swamp at Florida, survives in the swamp against Florida. So I guess speaking on that game, a lot of people going in, I think Alabama's spread in that game was minus 15.5 right before kickoff, if I'm not mistaken. It was something along those lines.
It was a little north of 2 touchdowns.
Yeah. So a lot of people were expecting Bryce Young, the Heisman candidate favorite, to come out there, start slinging. And he did in the first half. It was up 20-1-3. It looked good. All things were going Bama's way. Then the second half, Dan Mullen and Emory Jones flipped a switch. And things started to get really dicey. And the defense started to come alive. The pass rush started getting to Bryce Young. He wasn't getting sacks, but he wasn't making those completions to, move the chains and get on down. And I remember, I don't know if I said in the podcast or off the record or the Jared behind, but I was like, I feel like Florida's going to give us the game plan or some type of game plan to go to find a way to stop or slow down Bryce Young. And they kind of gave us that in a light version. They weren't able to do it successfully because they lost by 2 points in the end. I forgot the final score. Was it 29-31, if I'm not mistaken?
That is correct.
Okay, so it ended up that way, but it gave us a lot to think about and what to think about Bryce Young and, and his weaknesses. Because for the first 2 weeks, we just saw a bunch of strengths and no weaknesses. And a lot of people were like, well, Bama's just being Bama and they're unstoppable. But Florida may have given a lot of teams, that are, looking from the outside in to say, hey, these are the ways that you could possibly slow down Bama and maybe we could catch them in an upset for teams like an Ole Miss or maybe even a Georgia, our home school. But yeah, I have to say, for Bama, Mechie was good, but it didn't have the greatest fantasy day. Bryce Young still had 3 or 4 touchdowns. The defense was a little bit shaky at times, but Bama, they got like we said earlier, they were able to get away with the win against the Swamp, but it wasn't as convincing as a lot of people thought. I'll let Jared speak a little bit more from the Florida side and a little bit more of his thoughts on that game. What do you think?
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts about this game. Yeah. First of all, I think I turned off this game when the score was 21-3 because I was just like, okay, like I know where this is going. Like Bama's gonna roll here, which is fine. I'm always down for watching Gator getting their butt kicked, but I was like, I got other games to watch. I'm just gonna go turn on something else. And lo and behold, I leave for those of you who don't know, I did go to the UGA South Carolina game because I had tickets to that, and I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna go have a good time. And so I leave for the South Carolina game, and it's like 21-9, and I'm like, okay, Florida scores a touchdown. That's fine. Bama will get back into it later. I get to the stadium and I get in there and it's like 28-23. And I'm like, what is going on? Bama, like, what are you doing here? And so I went back, watched the game, kind of broke it down for myself and everything. And there's so many different ways you can look at this game. And frankly, there's truths in every way you can look at it. A lot of people will tell you that this is a sloppy game by Bama. There's truth in that. A lot of people will tell you this is a great game by Florida. Yeah, there's a lot of truth in that. Execution was insane for Florida in the second half. Just watching some of these plays, like you just them getting these plays off and managing to find, like, Emory Jones again. I can't believe the words are coming out of my mouth as a Dog fan, but just like, you got to credit Florida on a lot of those plays, especially in the second half, where like they just found ways to make plays work. And that's what kept them in that game the entire time, especially on defense. They were able to get after Bryce Young, like Xavier was alluding to, and everything, and was able to slow Bama down just enough. Like, is it again? A lot of people are kind of questioning about, like, should Bama have dropped because of this game? Should Florida have risen because of this game and everything? I think they're both fine where they're at. In like the rankings and everything, like AP poll and everything, like Florida maybe bump up just a little bit. Because again, I think we saw the ceiling of Florida in that game. When you see them firing on all cylinders, they are absolutely a team that could take down any team in the country, and they have the potential for that. So kudos to the Gators on that. Again, that feels like vomit coming out of my mouth as a Georgia fan saying that, but even still. But again, Bama, again, just kind of a sloppy game on some plays. Their defense looked off throughout most of that game. There were just times where the middle of the field, not 5-10 yards down the field, was just wide open. And it was just an easy pitch and pass for Emory Jones every single time. And I'm just sitting there like, I feel like Bama doesn't leave gaps like that open on purpose. But even still, again, I think this is the culmination of what Saban's been talking about for the past 2 weeks, where he's been saying this team isn't there yet. This team isn't where I want it to be yet. And everybody's like, really? We just saw them stomp Miami. We just saw them stomp Mercer. Again, Mercer, not exactly anything, but like Miami is still that marquee win. And everybody's like, they look unbeatable. Saban, once again, proven right. Again, Bama may have stomped Miami. Guess who also just stomped Miami? Michigan State. I don't think we're ready to say that Michigan State's ready to stomp on Bama or to keep up with Bama or anything like that. So even so, just close game, a lot closer than I thought it was, especially after that first quarter. I was very surprised to see Florida really stick in it, and they just grinded their way back towards a very solid chance to win this game. So
yeah, all without Anthony Richardson as well too. He never played a snap in that game. And the funny thing was, it was always because of the hamstring injury. But then I went back to some tweets where he, before the game, he was doing bat flips. So I don't know how much Dan Mullen was leading on with that, saying, he's not fully healthy. And I was like, your player's doing bat flips before the game. I think he's ready to go at any point at the time of the game. But I will like to shout out.
I didn't heard that.
Yeah, for like 15 seconds, I'll just give credit to where credit is due. I think what the key was for Florida is that they kept Alabama's defense on their toes with Emory Jones as the option of, like, being able to run or pitch it to the other back. What just kept Bama just, second guessing themselves. You see Emory Jones either try to take off for a run, but have his running back stay really close by him to where it looked like he may go for the pitch and fake it, pull it back, and then, run for a 5 or 6 yard game. So those was the little things that, Florida was connecting on that. It kind of, showed their identity a little bit of, like, this is the team that we are. Like Jared said, we saw their ceiling. That is who Florida's going to be. Now, I don't think, like you said, in terms of their ranking, I think they're perfectly fine where they are. It's just I do think they're one of the better teams in the nation, but out of the rankings, I can't move anybody because of all the parity that's happened so far. We have to let the season progress, and then I can have an accurate adjustment to where they should be towards the end of the year.
No, again, I think that's entirely fair. Yeah. All right, I guess we should go ahead and move on to the next game here, and that was number 3, Oklahoma. Or I think they were number 4 last year. No, they were number 3 last week still.
They were number 3, but they're number 4 this week.
They struggled at home against Nebraska. Now, Nebraska is not a good football team by any stretch of the imagination. So obviously this is a legitimate struggle win for Oklahoma. And it's probably the second one of the season with them escaping Tulane in their first game of the season. So it's got a lot of people wondering now, like, is Oklahoma truly a contender for this year? Like, there was a lot of hype coming in for Oklahoma this year. Like, there's a lot of people who are kind of pointing, like, if there are 2 teams that everybody was talking about, like, oh, this is their year. It's Georgia and Oklahoma. Georgia's done their business. Oklahoma really hasn't so far. Now, they've won all 3 of their games, don't get me wrong. But even still, they don't look impressive doing it. And I'm like, I'll be honest, this is a hard team to figure out because, like, I watched this game. I had this game on my laptop, and I was probably watching this one out of the new ones a little bit more than a lot of the other ones I was kind of trying to pay attention to because I was just so curious, like, what was going on here? And I couldn't figure it out for the life of me outside of the fact that just Oklahoma's offense stalls at the weirdest times. And it's like they'll get down a good, decent amount of the field, but then all of a sudden they stall right at the point where they can't kick a field goal because it'd be too far. But then they're forced to punt, even though they've made it a decent way down the field. And so it's like, it looks like they're doing well, like when you're watching them and everything, but then you realize like 3 or 4 drives later, you're just like, they've scored like 1 touchdown or like 1 field goal in like the last 3 drives, but it doesn't feel like it. I don't know, Xavier, do you see anything here that kind of pointed at it?
Yeah, I'll say this. I think Oklahoma's youth is finally showing to where we always hear about Lincoln Riley's class of, oh, he's got this 5-star receiver with this 5-star quarterback coming in. And that's been only in, like, not to say recent memory, but like now we're getting a lot of the bigger names like Mario Williams and Spencer Rattler, Caleb Williams. And even down the line of next year's recruiting class, he has the 5-star, and I think that's the number 1 quarterback and another 5-star receiver coming in. Mm-hmm. And these guys have not played in these environments at all yet. Mm-hmm. And you're playing bigger games. A lot of expectations are put on top of you, and you don't look the part. You don't have anybody to, not to say bail you out, but you've lost a lot of talent. And then, especially on the offensive and defensive side of the ball, you don't have the same old line. Spencer Rattler is not as hyped up as we thought he was going to be coming out of high school, making all these crazy throws and having the player comp with Patrick Mahomes. I just don't see it. And there's times in that games where I thought, hey, maybe you should put Caleb Williams in. I was like, I mean, just to, throw a different look out there and see, is this guy going to, is my ceiling just winning the Big 12, or is the other guy going to, possibly win me a national championship? Now, I think these guys are still pretty young. And like Spencer Rattler is obviously draft eligible this year, but still a very raw product. And, there's times where I'm just like shaking my head. I'm like, you don't look like the first round QB that I was kind of expecting you to be going into the season. And it's no disrespect to the receivers either, where there are a lot of talented receivers that could start anywhere in the country, but it just doesn't seem like what Jaden Hasselwood, he was a number 1 receiver about 2 or 3 years ago coming out of Georgia, and he's coming off an injury as well too, but he doesn't look as the same anymore. Can't provide separation, has to rely on his athleticism. So it just comes down to those type of plays. And then the running back room is just very confusing at times of like, you lean on Eric Gray, then you lean on Kennedy Brooks, and then you try to get Eric Gray incorporated in the passing offense, but then sometimes you throw Kennedy Brooks out there in the for your downhill, the run downhill. And I mean, that's great to have 2 good backs, but if neither of them are going to be consistent and both of them are not consistent at the same time, then it's just going to cause for you to struggle against other teams, especially like a Nebraska where, I mean, Nebraska's still bad, but I mean, I knew Nebraska was going to, be able to put up points against, lesser competition with Adrian Martinez and his legs, but I didn't expect him to do that against Oklahoma, the number 3 team in the nation. So it's very confusing at times. And yeah, for them to be rated number 3, I think going into the season, they were rated number 2 in the preseason polls. And yeah, it just didn't look like that. So I expect, you know what, down the line, I wouldn't be surprised if there was actually an upset against Oklahoma this year, whether it's Iowa State. I'm not going to say Texas because they still have a lot of work to do, but if another team can catch them like on an off day, maybe like a TCU or somebody like that, things could
ATC
spell
would be a
really
good
bad.
option.
Yeah, so things could spell for big trouble for in Norman, Oklahoma coming down the line. So it'll be interesting to see. But hopefully they'll, win out, win the Big 12 and make it to the playoffs, and we'll see what they truly are. But for now, yeah, I'm not seeing it.
I'm looking at the stats real quick, and we'll move on to the next game here real quick. But one thing that's boggling me. Do you know what the longest pass in this game was?
Whew, man, I feel like it was probably to Jaden Hasselwood, but I don't know for how much. Probably for like 15 or 20 something yards.
Well, it's 20. It was for 23 yards. It was to Marvin Mims, but
It was to Marvin.
still, but even still, like the lack of deep passes in this game is striking to me. Do you know what? Do you know what Rattler's average yards per attempt was this game?
If I had to guess, it'd probably be like 4 or 5.
6. But even
6?
still, you want your QB averaging like 8, 9.
Yeah.
Per attempt. I don't know if it's that Riley doesn't trust Rattler, or maybe like there was something specific about Nebraska that I just wasn't seeing that just forced them to have a short passing game situation for this game. But again, there's a lot of questions in Oklahoma right now, and I'd like to have them answer within these next couple of weeks. Yeah. We'll go ahead and move on to the next game. From one struggle bus to another, Clemson struggling against Georgia Tech. Final score of 14-8. Yeah, pretty much a lot of the same things here that really we said about Oklahoma and everything. But Clemson, we've known that there's some offensive struggles kind of going on. They really showed it in this game. Wasn't even until the fourth quarter that they decided to run DJ a little bit, and that kind of opened things up a little bit for them to manage to get a second score on the board. Because good Lord, it was like 7-3 for so long in this game.
Yeah. So, they did have the delay though. They had the rain and lightning delay, so that's why things.
That's fair, but that doesn't excuse you still being 7-3 at like.
Oh no, not
going into
Georgia
halftime.
Tech. Yeah, no, not against Georgia Tech. That was very confusing to me as well. And it's so crazy that they had DJ make 25 attempts, and he only had around about like 126 yards passing. That just doesn't sound like winning football for a quarterback. If a quarterback's making 18 completions at a Power 5 program, I'm expecting to get 150 to 200, maybe even 200 plus. And for the old Clemson offensive, a year ago with Trevor Lawrence is making 25 attempps. Trevor Lawrence is still getting about 200 to 300 yards off of big plays. Now I know they don't have Amari Rodgers anymore. They don't have the old of a Mike Williams or a Hunter Renfrow, or just great receivers they have. But you still have Justin Ross, you have Joseph Ngata. You have all these young receivers. I mean, even though I think EJ Williams is currently hurt, still have Fred Lasson, Joe, and a lot of great other guys that you recruited. And now I'm just questioning is Dabo really developing these receivers and Elliott? Are they really bringing these guys up, or is it just talent?
I'll tell you what the problem is here, Xavier, with the Clemson receiving core. And that's if you line them all up next to each other. You could take a cardboard cutout of one, place it in front of the other, and they would disappear completely, because you know why? They're all the exact same. They're all 6'2". They're all about 190, 200 pounds. None of them bring a different skill set. So you're just planning for the same type of receiver over and over again. I think that's finally catching up with Clemson a little bit. They don't have a guy like Jamison Williams on their roster. They don't have a guy like A.D. Mitchell. They don't have a guy like if you just want to go back to Bama and everything, when they had Ruggs, Judy, Waddle, and Devontae, those are four different guys with four different skill sets that you had to account for in that game. Clemson doesn't have that. Even Clemson the past couple of years had something better than that, because Amari Rodgers kind of gave you that speed option last year.
Yeah.
Cornell Powell is your big tall possession receiver.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of these guys are just, again, it's one game plan really to fall for. And again, like with Oklahoma, they refuse to push the ball down the field. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact, again, that you don't have guys that can separate. You don't have guys that can burn and take the top off of defenses. So you're forcing DJ to pass. Like, I think one of my friends was joking because he has DJ and CFF, and he was like, I can't deal with a quarterback that refuses to throw the ball more than 6 yards down the field. And I'm like, yeah, like, and it's so weird because again, last year they let DJ let it fly during the Notre Dame and Boston College game. But again, I think a lot of it has to do with their receiver core. Not that they're all bad receivers or anything like that, but again, when you don't have a plethora of options in terms of skill sets and everything, the defense can just focus on shutting down one kind of receiver. That's going to spell big trouble for your offense.
Now, I will say this. I think I will give a bright spot to Clemson because I think they've been missing this for a while, and I think they finally identified their guy.
Okay.
I'm a big guy about establishing the run. I think establishing the run gets your offense going, and then you can provide more things and, open the playbook up a little bit more when you have that legitimate threat. They've had it over the past 3 or 4 years with Travis Etienne. Now he's gone. They've been looking for that next guy. They've tried out Kobe Pace, Lynn J. Dixon, and the freshman Will Shipley. And a lot of people, they kind of heard throughout camp it was Kobe Pace. Lynn J. was going to probably be second. He probably wasn't getting those reps. And Will Shipley was talented, but he was a freshman. So never could really understand what you're going to get out of Will just yet. But this game kind of proved that Will Shipley is probably going to be that guy going forward for the rest of the year. He got 20 carries, only 88 yards, but 2 touchdowns. And I feel like he's versatile as well, too. Can catch out of the backfield. He provides different options, can put it in the slide as well. So I think with that going forward, and if they can control the pace of their game and then get back to that Clemson tempo that they're used to, I think that could spell well for DJ and that offense going forward, even though I don't really like their receivers, like you said, for the reason that you gave. Maybe one of them can break out. Maybe Justin Ross can go back to old form of like 2019. So one could hope, but I think that is a bright spot to, look forward to in the future of as long as they get their pacing and their tempo back right, maybe the playbook will open back up and maybe DJ can go through his progressions and, take those chances downfield. But for now, it just looks terrible.
No, I agree. I agree pretty much. I'd say probably 99%. I'm sure if I listened to you again, I'd find something wrong you said.
Oh yeah. It's okay. I'll come back to you in 2 days and be like, Jared, I remember saying this, and then it'll happen on Saturday, and I was like, I was right. And
no, but you also play the game where you're just like, see, I said this. I'm like, no, you actually said the direct opposite. And you're just like, what? No, I didn't. I'm like, Xavier, we have a show now. I can roll back the tape.
You can, but that's great because it puts accountability on me. Because when I do remember things, and you also remember me remembering things, I'm just like, all right, I was affirmed in what I believed in. So it's all
true.
Good.
That is very, very true. Anyway, we'll try to hit some of these other ones real quick. Honestly, so Cincinnati beats Indiana. I had sent out a tweet before the game started where a lot of people were saying that this game lost a lot of the luster from preseason because Indiana used to be a top 25 team, Cincinnati still a top 10 team and everything, but even still, Indiana not looking as good, kind of made the game lose its luster. And I sent out a tweet. I was like, or actually, no, it was on my watch plan that I sent out, and I was like, don't tell the Hoosiers and don't tell the Bearcats that because this game is every bit as important as it was before the season. And both teams played like it. This was one of the best games of the weekend. Tons of back and forth, lots of turnovers, lots of plays made on both sides of the ball and special teams in this game. I thought this was a great game. And frankly, Cincinnati, congratulations for just toughing it out and pulling away on a big one. So Xavier, what are your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I didn't get to watch too much of this game. I think I was watching another game at the time. I think, what was this, a 2:30 game or a 3 o'clock game?
This is a noon game.
It was a noon game. So, yeah, I was probably watching the Michigan State and Miami game. So I didn't have multicast like Jared. I used to, but I was somewhere else at the moment. So I was let me just focus on the one game that I really wanted to see. But I kept on getting updates on my phone, and it just looked like in that first half, Desmond Ridder and that Cincinnati offense was struggling. Jerome Ford was doing great. I'm happy to see that Jerome Ford, transfer from Alabama, finally waited his time after who was the back before him last year?
Dokes,
Jared Dokes. So I'm happy to see Ford being the next man up in that running back. But I was just not inspired by Ridder and the wide receivers and Wiley as well too. I'm like, wow, I didn't know Cincinnati could be shut down like this for an entire half. Like, in that Georgia game at the end of the year, I was like, y'all kept us on our toes all 4 quarters.
Mm-hmm.
I was just like, maybe you lost some talent. Maybe there's some things changed. Coordinators moved around, but you still kept your head coach and OC. So I was like, all right, what's going on? Because I kept seeing Michael Penix and Ty Freifogel, like, first half just kept hitting. And I was like, oh, man, is this the Indiana that everybody's been talking about in the offseason? Like, healthy Penix, Freifogel, this number 1 receiver for him. But then second half came around, they got back into a rhythm, and then as Jared alluded to before on the show, or off the record before we were talking before, that it was a flip just switched, and Cincinnati just had everything going their way. So I mean, Cincinnati is a top 10 team for a reason. I did, kind of have hopes for them being a top 4 team towards the end of the year. Now I think I believe they have Notre Dame down the line.
They do.
If they can beat Notre Dame, then I can have a more a legitimate argument. But for now, I'm just like, yeah, you're about right where you are. I think they're like 9 or 8 or something like that.
I believe they're 8.
Yeah, so I think they're appropriately rated, and I'm fine with them being there. And they showed a good game against a quality program, even though India is not ranked at the time. Some teams, they're still good teams, and they're just not top 25. So Cincinnati had a good win. Oh, excuse me. Cincinnati had a good win.
Yeah. Again, completely. Oops, that was a little bit of an ad playing. That's all right. Anyway, we'll go ahead and move on to the next game here, and that is Ohio State or Tulsa at Ohio State, and just another team that struggled. Again, don't believe the final score on this one. I believe it's like 41-20. Ohio State struggled in this game mightily. This was
3 quarters.
This is a 1-score game in the third quarter, and it wasn't until Travion Henderson turned on his 5-star God powers in the second half of this game to where Ohio State could really, really pull away in this game. But man, what was up with just a lot of teams struggling this week? Like, who are supposed to be like top contenders? What was it?
I really don't know, but I will say this: it was really, I felt really bad because in a couple of leagues, in our home league, I was going against our good buddy John, and he had Chris Olave, and he had a big fat 0 next to his name for 2 quarters, and I was kind of concerned because we have that rule about, hey, if a player is hurt or injured and we don't know about it, then you could just the commissioner can sub him in. But then I find out that Chris Olave has been in the game. He's been targeted. Or he wasn't getting targeted for like the first quarter, and just for a really long time, and then he just wasn't making the catches. And I was like, Ohio State took away probably one of their greatest strengths of getting Chris Olave the ball. And this is the reason why you struggle. You didn't let your playmakers do what they needed to do early. Now,
it doesn't help that again Stroud was having a terrible day.
Oh no, he was having a terrible day. I don't understand where, like, I know last week the Oregon loss was tough. But you're going against Tulsa. This is supposed to be a bounce back game. Like, Tulsa's still a good. Well, okay, they did lose early in the AAC to that God, who they lose to? They lost to that unranked team that wasn't that good and took them out of the contention for their conference. But neither here nor there. But Tulsa, I thought, was a good team going into the year, and I guess they kind of showed that their defense is still there. But at the same time, you're Ohio State. You're this coveted program of having. Oh, we have the best 5-star receivers. We're basically almost wide receiver us and Alabama and LSU, if you want to pick your school, whichever one you want to claim, and choose your claim to prominence and whoever has that title. But the fact that you're struggling against a Tulsa team that's not in a Power 5 conference, and you can't spread the ball around to all these playmakers that you have is just very concerning going later on to the year. And I think it's going to be very concerning going against some of this Big Ten competition they have coming. Now it looks like some of these Big Ten teams are kind of moving on with some steam. Penn State got a big win over Auburn. Wisconsin still looks good. Minnesota, even though they lost the first game, if they meet them down the line, Iowa's a great defensive team. So you have a lot of stiff competition. You're going to have to rise to the occasion. Tulsa can't be that team that you're struggling against, because if you're struggling against Tulsa, imagine going against Iowa in November.
I mean, you're 100% right. And again, I think the big name we really need to focus on here with this game is Mr. Travion Henderson. Ran absolutely wild in this game. well over 200 yards. I believe was it 270? I think it hit. Like
It was like 277. Yep, 277 and 3 touchdowns on 24 carries.
dude absolutely destroyed Tulsa once he was out. Once he was like handed the rock. I'm not sure what happened to Miles Williams in this game. I'll be real. I need to do some more research into why he didn't get a single carry in this game.
Yeah,
Thought
no
that was
reports
kind of
have come
weird.
out. Yeah, no reports have come out just yet. I've been looking for a little bit, but I'll check on later tonight and tomorrow. But we'll see going forward for the future. A lot of people are happy that Trevion got this opportunity, and maybe look like going forward he's going to be RB1, and there's
Yo,
no other classification.
I couldn't put Travion Henderson in our list of waiver wires for this week because he's owned by too many people already. But y'all, he should be 100% by the end of this week. There's no reason not to at least stash Travion at this point.
Yeah.
We'll go ahead and move on to the next game here. That is the whiteout. Penn State beats Auburn 28-20. Xavier, I heard a little bit of grumble there because he called this game wrong. I called it right. That's it. We're moving on to the next game. Nah, I'm joking.
Please, let's do. Yeah. I didn't get to watch too much of the whiteout because as a Georgia fan, I was watching the Georgia South Carolina game. I know it's not a big game for everybody else in the country, but I know Jarrett was at the game. I was watching the game. I was excited. Things were happening, but I kept tuning in and out of the whiteout. And Tanks Bigsby did what I predicted him to do. I thought, he was the most prolific athlete on that field at the time, and he showed it. Mm-hmm. But it was just terrible. Just on I thought the Auburn defense is going to do a little bit better. You did hold Penn State to like what was it, 21 points, 27 points. It was a really close game. I forgot the score. It was like 21-20.
They held them to 28.
28. So I mean, you held them to 28, which I mean, holding a team to 28 still doesn't sound great. But I was like, I guess a Penn State team, top 10 program, that I guess that's deserves some type of credit, and that's why Auburn is still ranked in the AP poll. But it just did not look good from like you let Sean Clifford make too many throws that I was just like, Sean Clifford is an interesting up or down quarterback to where he can make some really good throws and he can make some really boneheaded throws to where you're just questioning like, why are you on the football field? Mm-hmm. So he had Jahan Dotson for 2 touchdowns. Noah Cain got some rushing touchdowns, which I did think that Noah Cain wasn't going to be a big factor. And he got a goal line carry, which kind of got him a touchdown, but he did like tote the rock for like, I think it was maybe 20 times, only got 46 yards, or maybe 12 times. It was something like along those lines. He had the ball a lot, couldn't run against that Auburn front. And I just kind of thought
I feel like you're going to say that about a lot of running backs against Auburn's front this year.
Maybe. If Auburn's front continues to show that, then I'll give Noah Cain a little bit more credit. But until for now, I'm just going to say, hey, he couldn't do it against Ball State. He couldn't do it against Auburn. Maybe, a lot of people were saying, hey, if Journey Brown never got injured, Penn State wouldn't be having these problems.
Could be. Xavier, I'm going to play a little thought exercise with you here because I just want to see if, we'll play a game like, are you smarter than an Auburn head coach?
Oh, yeah.
So you got 3 minutes left.
Yep.
You are down a touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
You are at the 2-yard line.
Yes.
It is 4th down, 4th and goal.
Yes.
You are Auburn.
Yes.
What do you do?
Goal line fade.
And you hear it here, folks. Xavier is just as dumb as the Auburn head coach.
Yes, you told me to think. You said, hey, if I first interpreted the question as like, yeah, put your mind in the Auburn head coach. And I was like, wait, that's the wrong game. You said, am I smarter than the Auburn head coach? Never mind. Let's take the obvious answer of like, what the Seattle Seahawks should have done in that Super Bowl against the Patriots in, 2016, where if you have a prolific running back that his name, you have beast mode and you have a guy named Tank Bigsby, why on God's green earth would you not run the ball
when it's
2 yards away? I just don't understand. Like, what did you want to get cute with your play calling? Did you want to catch the defense by surprise? It's not going to happen.
Like the throw wasn't even a good throw either.
It's
like
Bo Nix.
It was not
it's
like
Bo Nix.
I don't understand the whole like, yeah, let's not trust Tank Bigsby. Let's trust Bo Nix. Yeah, I mean, I'm so blown away by that. We'll go ahead and move on to the next game. Unless you got anything more you want to say here.
No, nothing to say.
All righty, cool. So this was one that like I was playing around with the idea that this could be an upset. And I'm like, this had upset written all over it. And it happened. I didn't call it because I just had a gut feeling that UCLA would still pull out the win. But Fresno State does upset UCLA in a wild game after dark. My God, if you haven't gone and watched the last 5 minutes of this game, it is some of the craziest back and forth I've seen in a long time. Well, at least since the UCF at Louisville game from this past Friday.
Oh yeah, that was a crazy game.
That was a great game as well. There's a couple of game of the year candidates from this weekend. There's some really good ones, but even still,
yeah.
Fresno, I think, really has solidified themselves as a legitimate top 25 team, if not better than that, because they push Oregon, almost upset them. They do go in and upset UCLA. I think, again, at Fresno State, I really like their offense, and I really like what they can do. And honestly, with how Nevada's looking and everything, I'm kicking myself for probably not picking Fresno State to win the Mountain West this year.
Yeah, same here. I didn't get to watch this game because we live on the East Coast and I enjoy sleep. So there was a lot of that game being like at 12 a.m. and I was like, all right, yeah, I can stay up a little bit. And then I immediately crashed. I wake up in the morning and I find out UCLA has been upset. And I'm not gonna lie, I was completely shocked. I didn't, have that premonition that Jared had of upset being a possibility, because I liked what UCLA showed them their first 2 games or first 3 weeks because they had a week 0. And I was like, yeah, UCLA is an upcoming program. I would like to see them down the line and go against Oregon for the Pac-12 championship. And now I just don't even know who's going to be there for the representing the Pac-12 South. It's going to be very interesting. It still can be UCLA, but I just did not expect Fresno. Like, I do like Fresno State's offense. I love Ronnie Rivers. I love Jalen Cropper, Jake Heiner. Jared enlightened me about these Fresno State early on in the year, and I was like, all right, I'll watch their first week 0 game against UConn. Now, it was against UConn, but I found some things I did like that can translate into bigger games, and apparently it did against UCLA. It completely stopped Zach Charbonnet and Britton Brown. I did not think that was possible for a group of 5 team. So I was like, congratulations. And Dorian Thompson Robinson, I mean, he did have 3 touchdowns, but 14 for 24. I mean, I think a lot of people, coming into the year, we were expecting DTR, to do DTR things and maybe be a little bit improved under Chip Kelly for his 3rd or 4th year. But it still looks like he's still a, wide-eyed freshman doing a lot of the same things, trying to play hero ball. Of, trying to use his legs, make plays, and trying to find windows and, lead comebacks. And sometimes the better team just gets you. And I have to give all credit to Fresno State. They played a great game. Ronnie Rivers had over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. Jalen Cropper showed why, hey, he's a good receiver. Even Josh Kelly had a 120-yard game. So UCLA's defense was completely exposed. I'm surprised. Usually in the past, the Pac-12 defense, I would just be like, yeah, it's a Pac-12 defense. Anybody's going to score. It's just a matter of, are you going to be able to come back and score more points than them? And this game was kind of a shootout towards the end, but it just didn't have enough firepower. And you let 2 guys have over 100 yards. So there's nothing you can do about that. So I give all praise to Fresno State and what they did with that offense.
I mean, I'm joining the cult of Jake Heiner believers now, because this man led the final 2 or 3 drives for Fresno State hurt. Like I said, watch the last 5 minutes of this game. You can see Jake Heiner grabbing at his side the entire last 5 minutes of this game, and he still was able to put together these drives to lead Fresno State to victory in this game. Really, go watch this game. There's so many great games from this weekend. This one probably was one of my favorite endings.
Yeah.
We'll go ahead and move on to the next game here. This is one that Xavier and I called.
Yes.
Because everything just felt like it was going this way. Now, I think we predicted Michigan State to win this. I don't think we predicted them to absolutely destroy Miami.
I think I did it internally, but I don't think we've said it out loud. So internally, I believed all season coming in. But this is the game I watched from the beginning of the first quarter to the very end at 0-0. Oh, man, Michigan State with Mel Tucker and their honestly miraculous campaign. Hearing the commentators talk about how Michigan State put this program back to Mel Tucker put this program back together through the transfer portal, is just amazing. I did not know coming into this game how many transfers that Mel Tucker had brought out of the transfer portal to put on this offense and put together for this season, and that he's having this success now. Like, obviously, the big name of Kenneth Walker, you have Thorne as well at QB, but it's just a lot more down the line of the defensive side and the O-line and some other players out as well, too. And I'm just, for having the season that he's having, the game plan he's had is just man, I can't even describe the praise to give to Mel Tucker for the genius that he has, and finally having the opportunity to show that he's, a great coach in the college football landscape, just given the right opportunity and chances. And I look forward to seeing Michigan State in the future with him at the helm, because I know a lot of these recruits are looking at him now like, hey, this is an interesting program. I mean, now you have to compete with Michigan because they're looking good as well, too. But Michigan State can be put back on that map to where, they were looking back at a lot of games where, Saban upset some teams in the past at Michigan State. Now, Mel Tucker has gone 3-0 against some upset teams he wasn't favored against. So I'm not saying Mel Tucker's Nick Saban, but I'm saying you're getting that kind of feel where Michigan State fans are actually, coming out of the shadows and are happy to enjoy football now. Like, you're not just a basketball school. You can actually have pride in your football team. But now let's get to the football side. Kenneth Walker, I know a lot of people may be surprised about this, but I don't know if I've been vocal about this enough, but I'm just gonna keep on saying it. I know I've told Jared this plenty of times that I've heard so much news about Kenneth Walker. I love the transfer from when he went from Wake Forest to Michigan State, and all the news I kept hearing was this man's gonna be our first 1,000-yard back that we've had in a very, very long time. And I bought into the hype as soon as I read that, and that was back in January, and I was sold. I was like, I believe it. This man was a top 5 touchdown guy at Wake Forest in the nation. And I was like, I think that could translate given a better role, because they were running a bit of a different style of system and offense at Wake Forest that just wasn't suited for Kenneth Walker. Now they're giving him a bell cow role where he can actually play make, and he's making himself known. And a lot of people, even some NFL scouts, are starting to take notice. Now we can go to the quarterback with Peyton Thorne. That's a big surprise for me. I did not expect him to make this type of jump this early, to where now I have to look at the Michigan State QB, and I'm just like, you may actually have, some legitimate value. Not to say maybe on the NFL level, but for CFF, he's hitting a lot of these receivers at some good spots as well, too. Now, he has to work on a few things with his footwork and his progressions, but I see a lot of promise for him going forward. And their receivers, Jalen Reed, great receiver, showed a lot of promise that made a lot of big-time catches down the field, in the middle, just on all 3 levels of that field. So it was just great. They have some other guys on the outside as well, too, that I'm forgetting. They have some great backs behind, Simmons, behind Kenneth Walker as well. So Michigan State going forward shows a lot of promise. I'm excited for their program and for the future. They might even get even a bigger upset down the road later on in the season. So I just love watching Michigan State all season long. Never thought I'd be seeing that in 2021.
Alrighty, so now that Xavier's given every reason why he hates the Spartans.
Yes.
No. There's nothing I can add to Michigan State that Xavier hasn't already. The other thing I wanted to add from this game that I have been calling is that Charleston Rambo,
I completely forgot.
Goes
that's all
off for Miami in this game for the tune of well over a couple hundred or 100 yards. And I believe 2-3 touchdowns in this game. He went crazy in this game. There was at least double-digit receptions in this game. And if he keeps this up, he's absolutely going to be somebody you want in your fantasy leagues. I have been calling this for so long, saying that once Charleston and Derek King get going, it's going to be a fantasy matchup you are going to want every single week. And I am loving the fact that it is happening right here before my eyes. So that's all I have to really say about this game, other than the fact that, congratulations, Michigan State. You absolutely annihilated Miami. We'll go ahead and move on to the next game here. And this isn't so much as the game itself, but more just something that happens in this game. And that was USC or Washington State at USC. And really the name here is Jackson Dart. Man, oh man, completely just revitalized this USC offense after Keaton Slovis gets hurt. Now,
Oh,
again,
wait.
it's
Can I make the joke? Can I make the joke? I saw this on Twitter. I wanted to shout out whoever made the tweet, but somebody else like, Keaton Slovis got Keaton Slovis. That's exactly how I describe this game. You get injured, your starting quarterback gets injured, and then your backup, your freshman
oh,
backup
okay,
comes
yeah.
in.
It took me a minute, but yeah, you're right. That's exactly how Keaton Slovis got the starting job in the first place.
Oh yeah. So hey, you never know. He could come to Georgia. Even though I don't want him, it could happen.
It could happen. I don't know. Jackson Dart looked incredible in this game, dude. Watching him, he's going to be something special at USC, I believe. And I don't like saying stuff like that after one game, but man, this offense just looked different under him. I was very, very happy watching them during this game. And you could kind of tell that it looks like that they're happier to push the ball down the field with him a little bit more. And again, I like what I saw out of him. What did you think, Xavier?
Yeah, I'll give you your credit. I don't think you remember. I don't know if you remember yourself saying this, but you said, "Don't be surprised if Jackson Dart gets the starting job." Now, not for obviously these reasons, and lights it up because in
No,
the spring game he looked.
I think somebody had mentioned that I basically had said something along the lines of Slovis probably isn't QB1 by the end of the year.
Yeah.
And I'm
now, obviously, you had different reasonings for that because you thought maybe Dart's talent could, overtake Slovis's job. Yeah, overcome Slovis's job and performance. But Slovis was injured. Dart came in. Now he threw a couple of interceptions, but he came out and still threw for 3 or 4 touchdowns in that game. He obviously had a great connection with Drake London, their number 1 receiver now. And it just looked a lot like a revitalized USC team. Now, I want you to reference your tweet that you made about the future for USC. They get the right coach. Now, I partially agree with you in some areas. Now, I partially disagree with you in some, but I do think it's a legitimate argument that you can make. So if you don't mind sharing that with our lovely listeners.
I thought you were gonna
Oh, no,
say it.
That's all you. You take the credit.
I basically said, again, just watching this game and everything, I'm like, USC is a legitimate playoff contender if they get this coaching hire right. There's too many great pieces on this team right now to where, and the young pieces, I might add, young pieces on this team to where if they get the right coach in there that can get them right every single game, again, USC is a legitimate playoff contender within a year or two, easily, in my opinion. Yeah, as they should be.
Exactly. The return to prominence, a lot of these schools, of these old greats of the Miamis, the Florida States, they all want to get back to those good old days of them, dominating the college football landscape, and they just haven't been able to do it. And I think if anybody has a shot to be the Nebraskas of the world as well too, I think USC probably has the best shot of returning to that old glory, considering that the conference that they're in is the Pac-12. The only obstacle you really have is just Oregon. And Oregon's recruiting at a high level. That's why I probably don't agree with you about maybe getting back to the college football playoffs so much. I think it is a possibility if you can recruit, over a period of 4 or 5 years and get the defense together and, find another great quarterback and some more wide receivers. But I think Oregon's just going to be that big hurdle for a while. But you know what? In the past few years, the Pac-12 always beats up on each other. So if you can have that consistency, a consistent Pac-12 team, that can show some promise for a playoff berth. I will not lie. Now that I'm saying a little bit more and thinking about it, yeah, might be onto something.
Yep. Like I said, I like the future of USC, and that USC is not a team I typically root for or I'm particularly attached to. Jackson Dart's quickly changing that for me. I just really like this team under him so far.
Yeah.
Last game we're going to talk about here. Again, this was just a wild one. Memphis upsets Mississippi State. I should say upset with big fat air quotes. Because there was a massive, just screwed up call during this game where Calvin Austin returns a punt for a touchdown, but he only is able to do that because the referee on the field calls the play dead, which all the Mississippi State players believe he's correct. So they stop the play, and then Calvin Austin just runs the ball back all the way, and they do count it on the scoreboard. And quite frankly, again, like the SEC's already admitted they messed up the call. This directly affected the fact that Memphis won the game, because without that touchdown, Mississippi State wins this game. Granted, now you can't always assume that, because again, you never know like exactly what happens after that. But even still, like, you just take away the one touchdown, bada bing, Mississippi State wins the game. But even still, like, it's been a while since I've seen a ref screw something up like that badly, at least until that night when the referees forced Penn State to punt on third down, because
that was pretty funny.
That God, some bad officiating this weekend. But even still, that's mostly what I want to talk about this game. It was great to see Calvin Austin just go off in this game. It looks like Mississippi State, we finally might have a consistent wide receiver there in Mekhi Polk. Not entirely sure. We'll see. But even still, I just wanted to rant about that call because it was so bogus.
Yeah. I picked Memphis in the upset. I did. I like their outside options. I think, you know what, Brendan Thomas, he may not have the greatest game, but looking at it, going against SEC defense, looked pretty good. And I like him. I can't wait till he gets back in the AAC play. Like, I really think he could, be able to run between the tackles and, explode for those big runs. Now, obviously, you're going against SEC defensive linemen, but once you're going against, some teams like LSU and maybe even a LA Tech, good AAC teams able to stop the run. I think Brandon Thomas has just better talent to get past them. So I'm excited about that future. Seth Hennigan, I still like. He threw, I think, one interception and a touchdown as well. So it wasn't like the greatest of game. But I still, you're going against the SEC defense, and you came in there in an environment that probably wasn't made for you. And, you're a freshman quarterback, kind of expecting a little bit more mistakes. Still look pretty poised and promising. So I'm excited for Memphis in the future. Besides that, Calvin Austin looks great. Probably want to see a little bit more from Javon Ivory down the line. I'm pretty sure that will come, more as he's getting used to this role as being the wide receiver too. But yeah, overall, I'm still excited. I have a lot of pieces of that Memphis offense on a few of my rosters. So yeah, if you still have some play, if Seth Hennigan and Brandon Thomas or Ivory still out there, I think you should take a flyer, especially on Thomas, especially because I think he's a prolific and great running back.
All righty. So before we move on to our waiver wire winners for this week, I just want to remind everybody, please make sure that you are following us on Twitter at CFF_Jarrett. He is at CFF_Xavier. We like answering your questions online there and everything. DM us. We try to make as much time for you guys as we can. Make sure you're following us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, both. Please make sure that you are subscribed on YouTube to make sure you are up to date with everything that we can provide. Mondays at 11 a.m., we will provide you with the weekly recap from this past week. The very next day, Tuesdays at 11 a.m., we provide you our upcoming week previews. And then sometime during the week, we will provide you our Kings Classic sit-start discussion for the week. Very soon, I will be getting back my desktop. Hopefully, everything will be in order there, and I can get you guys back the awesome, wonderful graphics that you guys are used to for the show. In addition to that, I just wanted to make sure I got those reminders out while we were taking a little break here. And now we will move on to our waiver wire winners of the week. We're going a little long here, so I'm going to do this a little bit differently this week, where I'm going to go ahead and name the 5 waiver wires that we've picked, waiver wire winners at each position that we've named for this week. And then we're going to kind of discuss it, pick out which ones we want to go into further. So first, we'll go with the quarterbacks. First one we have here is Kenny Pickett, who is currently owned on the quarterback from Pittsburgh, currently owned on 31% of rosters. We have Mr. Jackson Dart, owned on 11% of rosters, quarterback out of USC, who just started this past weekend. Quarterback Peyton Thorne, quarterback from Michigan State, owned on 4% of rosters. Quarterback Austin Kendall out of Louisiana Tech, owned on 13% of rosters. And quarterback Jerry Bohannon out of Baylor, owned on 5% of rosters. So Xavier, pick a name or two out here that you really want to talk about out of these guys.
I don't know. This is tough. I really don't. I want to speak from experience about Kenny Pickett, but I feel like you've done a lot more research on Kenny Pickett than I have. You've been on you've been on the Kenny Pickett train for a little while longer than me, so I'll leave you that. But I guess I could talk a little bit about Jackson Dart and Peyton Thorne. It's going to be a little bit interesting to hear about Slovis's injury. I know it's a shoulder injury, and he's in a sling at the moment. So it looks like for the foreseeable future, it may be Jackson Dart. Now, the interim head coach say, hey, we don't really know who's going to be out there. It might be Miller Moss, but I think everybody in the consensus is going to be Jackson. So with him being like 4% or now 11% owned, that's going to skyrocket after whenever other people waiver wires are been able to happen or go down. I can't think of the word. I can't think of words that
Process.
go with a process. Yes, it's late, everybody. I'm tired, but it's okay. We continue on because this is college football and we love college football. But yeah, it's definitely going to shoot up. It's probably going to get to like 40 to 50% when all those things process, because a lot of people are probably scrambling especially a lot of Slovis owners. So I think, if you're not a Slovis owner, or if you are a Slovis owner, you need to prioritize having Dart as your number one. Because, with that offense, like we spoke on, Jared spoke on, and I spoke on, and with Drake London and all those weapons that USC has, even if USC loses games, they're going to still be in a shootout. I think Jackson Dart gives them a good chance of, keeping them in games and possibly winning as well. So might as well take the starting USC quarterback, especially if he's going to be good as well too, and provides I guess a different skill set than Slovis, because Dart uses his legs a lot more, for a positive yardage than Slovis ever did in that one game. Now, it is a one-game sample, but I like what I saw out of it. So going forward, I would love Dart. Now, going to Peyton Thorne, Michigan State has proven that, hey, even though we have a great running back behind us, our quarterback is no slouch. Now, I do find at times that he takes the sack. He's not like a completely mobile guy, but against Miami, he had a few good positive runs for 11 or 12 yards in crucial plays and on crucial downs. And he makes the right throws. I never, feel like Peyton Thorne is just a terrible quarterback, and not accuracy is one thing I will never, slight Peyton Thorne on. There may be a couple of, no quarterback is perfect and go like 20 for 20, but I think his completion percentage is very decent for where he's at now. And I think going forward with the receivers that he has, why not? Especially with the Michigan State offense rolling like this and the competition they have in the next few games. I don't think they have anybody of that magnitude coming, of any type of stature and magnitude coming up. I think they have like a few Nebraskas and then maybe like a Maryland. So these are all games Peyton Thorne can go off and throw for like maybe 2 or 3 touchdowns and get you about 25, 27 points.
Yeah, and like you said, you saved Kenny Pickett for me, and I've liked Kenny Pickett. I this entire offseason, I thought he was one of the most underrated quarterback prospects of the year, because he has a great dual threat ability. He just provides you such a safe floor. I believe the lowest amount of points he scored this year in standard scoring has been about 25 points. Other than that, he's broken 30 twice so far. I believe he actually might have broken 40 this past week against God, who do they play this past weekend? I'm having brain fart over here. Western Michigan. I believe he broke 40.
Shootout.
Absolute shootout that game was. And people need to realize that the offense completely runs through Kenny Pickett. The running game for Pittsburgh is not something that they're relying on. So they're using his legs, they're using his arms. And so Kenny Pickett's a bigger part of the offense than ever before. And every game they've been involved in has been a close one. So Kenny Pickett will be in all 4 quarters in every single one of those. If you are struggling at quarterback, Pickett's not the sexiest pick in the world, but you know who else isn't either? Brennan Armstrong. You know what? You know who's saving fantasy teams right now? Brennan Armstrong. Kenny Pickett is an option for you if you need somebody with some pretty good upside and a very safe floor. So I say Kenny Pickett should be one of your top quarterback waiver wire pickups this week if you're struggling at quarterback. Now, let me review the 5 quarterbacks. Kenny Pickett, Jackson Dart, Peyton Thorne, Austin Kendall, and Jerry Bohannon are our 5 waiver wire QBs for the week. We're going to move on to running backs here.
So, can I take this one?
Absolutely. Go right ahead.
All right. For our waiver wire winners at running back, we have Sean Tucker out of Syracuse, owned by 30% on Fantrax. Then we have Rasheen Ali out of Marshall, 32%. Then we have Abram Smith, 33%. Where does he come out of, Jared?
He is Baylor.
Baylor. Oh, man. Baylor's looking pretty good too, but I think once they hit some more Big 12 competition, maybe that'll go down. But we'll see. They're showing promise. Treshaun Potts, 39%. People, I thought we had this discussion already.
No.
Treshaun
No, let me hop in here for a second. Yo, I literally didn't even look for Treshaun Potts last week, like when we were doing our waiver wire running backs, because I just assumed that people picked him up. But apparently he's still only owned in 39%. Yo, he is Mohamed Ibrahim again, basically. Not that, like, I think Ibrahim's more talented. He probably would have a better year.
But the workload
is all on Potts. Grab Potts, for crying out loud. Anyway, continue, Xavier.
All right, now we have Jalen Warren out of Oklahoma State at 7%. And then lastly, we have six. We have six running backs. We have Will Shipley out of Clemson, freshman running back, 26% ownership. So I guess I guess I could take it. I'll take a stab at two. I'll go with Sean Tucker and Will Shipley. Sean Tucker, if you've been with the Chasing Natty podcast as long as we've started, I think we started back in April, something like that.
I think it was March or April. Yes,
March or April. I think one of our first few videos we did fantasy CFF sleepers. And I said Sean Tucker. I liked the upside that he had for Syracuse, and he was only a freshman at the time. And his classification, I think, is still. I mean, obviously the COVID year doesn't count, so I can still consider him a freshman. But he's a sophomore. The workload that he gets, he's getting about 20 to 30 carries a game. But I mean, he is going up against tougher competition coming up soon. So maybe the touchdowns and the yardage will go down. But I still like the production. I like these high volume guys because if you're getting 20 to 30 touches, I like the odds of you breaking off for maybe a few big ones or just, maybe one big one. And then if you get a touchdown, obviously if you're the lead back and the only back for Syracuse, honestly, of notability, then you're probably going to get that goal line carry. So I love Sean Tucker going forward. I'm happy to see that he has 30%. Would like to see it go higher if people, listen to our podcast and take our advice, because I think he's that great of a back. Because this past weekend, he had about, 5 touchdowns and 50 points in
ridiculous amount of points.
Yeah, it was like 50 points in standard scoring, and it was crazy. So I love Sean Tucker. I'm happy that he's finally getting the recognition that he deserves. Then I'll go Will Shipley, the running back that we talked about earlier for Georgia Tech. I mentioned that he was a freshman. I know that he has the versatility to catch out the backfield. Not saying he's Travis Etienne, but he has a similar skill set. He's still a freshman. Not all every freshman is going to be great and have that breakout game like a Trevion Henderson. But hey, going forward, if Clemson's offense doesn't get it together, Will Shipley's probably they're gonna have to rely on Will Shipley in that run game. And if he's getting 20 carries against Georgia Tech and they struggle against NC State next week, I wouldn't be shocked if Will Shipley gets 20 to 30 carries. Now, I probably will be shocked if it is 30, but 20 to 25, I think, is a good sweet spot for Shipley going forward, and even getting some receiving work as well too. He's going to get a lot of touches in that offense going forward. So yeah, I love those two backs. So yeah, go pick them up off the waiver wire. Anybody you wanted to touch on, Jared?
I did want to touch one thing on with Sean Tucker. Like, obviously, I don't think anybody's expecting him to score 50 points every single week. But one thing I think, a little bit of context for this past week that I think people need to realize is Taj Harris was not playing for Syracuse. And thus, basically, the entire Syracuse passing game just gone.
Yeah. Another
so they
guy
had
in the sleepers.
You did
early on in the year.
So they were kind of forced to rely on Sean Tucker this past week. Now, granted, they were playing some FCS school. I don't even remember what it was. And so, yeah, Sean Tucker, I say pump the brakes just a little bit, but even still, absolutely worth picking up in your waiver wire because he's going to get plenty of work. I already said my piece about Treshaun Potts because why the hell is he still available in 61% of leagues? He's not available in any league I'm in. I can tell you that much right now because he's gone off the waiver wire already. The other person I want to talk about here is Jalen Warren out of Oklahoma State. Now, Oklahoma State's running back room is always just an enigma to try to figure out every single year. And what usually ends up happening is you find that Mike Gundy will find his one guy that he'll ride for several games at a time. So I'm not saying Jalen Warren is a guy to pick up for the rest of the season, but I can guarantee you that now that Mike Gundy has kind of found his guy, he's going to be riding him for at least the next couple of games. And so I think Jalen Warren is absolutely going to be worth picking up for just a couple of weeks here.
And I guess I'll give a little bit more context to Sean Tucker. He has scored in all his games so far, and two of the games he had over 100 yards. Now, only against the Rutgers game where they lost, he only had 50-something yards. But he's getting receiving work as well too. So, I do like that versatility in these backs. So I maybe going forward, it just if you just look at Syracuse's schedule, look at the matchups, and if you find them favorable for Sean Tucker, yeah, go out and get Sean Tucker and have him on your bench and throw him in for those matchups.
Yeah, makes sense. All right, we'll go ahead and move. Oh, first of all, I'll recap our running backs for this week. We got Sean Tucker, Rasheen Ali out of Marshall. We got Abram Smith out of Baylor. We got Trayshawn Potts out of Minnesota. We got Jalen Warren out of Oklahoma State, and we got Will Shipley out of Clemson. So now we'll move on to our wide receivers. I'll go through those real quick. First, we have Jaden Reed at 41% owned. He is the wide receiver out of Michigan State. Again, cheating a little bit. I usually go for under 40%, but again, it's just close enough, and he really should be owned on a whole lot more. I think that Michigan State passing game is good enough for us to realize that you want the wide receiver one for them this year, and Jaden Reed is that guy. Next wide receiver we have up today is Nathaniel Dell out of Houston. We have Jonathan Mingo out of Ole Miss. Ja'Cory Sullivan out of Central Michigan back on the waiver wire list because I believe he was over 40% last week, but now he's dropped under again because I don't even know why. Actually, he did pretty well last week. And you got Stanley Berryhill out of Arizona, and you got Dontavian Wicks out of Virginia. So Xavier, pick one or two guys that you are really, really happy about this week.
Obviously, Michigan State, Jaden Reed. I love what I'm seeing out of that. Just the Michigan State. I feel like this has been a Michigan State just rant for me or a rave. I forgot how those go. What's the positive one? I guess rave.
Rave is
Rave.
very positive.
Yeah, rant. I don't know. I like both of those words though. I feel like you can use them in a positive connotation, but obviously not. Definition.
I mean, you are ranting and raving.
I am ranting and raving, and especially we're going to get ranting later when we find our disappointments. But yeah, Jaden Reed, a great wide receiver, number one option for Peyton Thorne so far. But I am intrigued by Wicks out of, if I'm not mistaken, Virginia, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Virginia. Brennan Armstrong seems to be his number one receiver. And honestly, with Brennan Armstrong not using his legs so much this year, I mean, he's showing a lot of great accuracy with his arm. He's putting up big numbers, like 400-yard games, and Wicks just seems to be that number one guy for him. Mm-hmm. And I'm glad because I remember when we first started out with fantasy, I remember I took a flyer out on Rashawn Henry, the transfer that was a former 4- or 5-star wide receiver coming out of high school. And I thought, hey, maybe that would be the guy, but now it feels like it's Dontavian Wicks, and he only owned by 3%. So why not take a chance with the Virginia offense moving some things and moving some shaking things in the ACC, especially with the ACC being so unstable as it is now, and feels like anybody can put up points on anybody. Mm-hmm. Nobody's safe. Like I don't think there's really a defense that's really shutting down anybody this season. Maybe Pittsburgh, if you want to count that, but
you saw what they just did, or what Western Michigan just did.
But that was a good offense as well too. So we'll see.
Yeah. So you did Wicks, you did Reed. I'm gonna throw in here Nathaniel Dell. Now granted, Clayton Tune goes down, but so you're looking at possible shift there in wide receiver prioritization. But even so, Clayton Tune goes down. Dell still has a hell of a game. He's going to be the wide receiver one still moving forward. I think that Houston's going to be a team that's going to score a ton, and you're going to want the wide receiver one on that offense. You want the wide receiver one in the Dana Holgerson offense. So Nathaniel Dell absolutely should be owned by more than 21% of leagues. The other name I'm going to name here is Jonathan Mingo out of Ole Miss.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that.
I have been on the record several times talking about I'm not sure who's going to be the wide receiver that pops off for Ole Miss this week. And I still believe that. I still believe that you're going to see different wide receiver be the number one wide receiver every single week. But y'all, it's clear at this point, there's room for more than one fantasy relevant wide receiver in this Ole Miss offense. Hell, there's room for 3.
Ooh, I wouldn't go that far.
At any given week, you can see Xavier, don't tell me you can't see almost any given week the possibility of 300-yard receivers on this team.
I don't know.
The
I like
possibility. I'm not saying a
the
guarantee, but like
possibility. The possibility. I'm not really liking what I'm seeing so much from Braylon Sanders of getting 100 yards. Like I feel like if Matt Corral just if they're going against an easy opponent, then yeah, maybe I could see it. But I still like Dontario Mingo as those number one and number two. Those guys can get
but even
100 yards.
still,
And then,
like we're
but I
seeing
mean,
Mingo get we're seeing Mingo get consistent work each and every week. And so there's
yeah,
no reason not to just, if you're struggling at receiver, just plug in an Ole Miss receiver. They're more than likely going to get you plenty of yards and at least a touchdown. That
yeah,
there's so many scoring opportunities coming out of that offense. It's ridiculous.
yeah. But I still like Drummond a lot. I feel like the way they're using him, it's just more of like they like Drummond a little bit more because the way he scored, he got a rushing touchdown, which was really great.
Ooh.
So I was like, all right, you're getting past 100-yard games, rushing touchdowns. They must really like you. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, Mingo definitely had the better receiver day last week, over 100 yards, touchdown or two. So it was great for him.
Absolutely. So I'll go ahead and cover our wide receivers. We got Jaden Reed, Nathaniel Dell, Jonathan Mingo, Ja'Cory Sullivan, Stanley Berryhill, Dontavian Wicks. And again, if you're listening and there's a guy or two here that like we kind of skipped over because we are kind of running a little long here, so we're trying to shorten it down just a little bit. But if there's a guy here that you want a question about, again, don't be afraid to just send us a DM on Twitter. I'm in the CFF site Discord if you ever want to ask me a question there. Plenty of ways to reach us. Comment down below on YouTube. We like answering questions there as well. Last but not least, we have our waiver wire winners for tight ends, and we're going to spend almost no time here because these are just. I basically have 4 guys here that it's the same reasoning I gave the weeks before, but it's Lucas Kroll out of Pittsburgh, Tyreek James out of Tulane, Jelani Woods out of Virginia, and Sam Laporta out of Iowa. Y'all, those are your 4 options. If you're struggling at tight end, those are good, consistent options. I got nothing else for you there.
Yeah, Sam Laporta, Iowa tight end. You know what they produce out of there, so you may get a good week, but it's nothing too crazy like the top guys. Even though all the top guys didn't have so much of a great week, and that's moving on to what we have. I guess lastly is our airing of grievances, our big disappointments for the weeks, and we have about 9 guys. And I'll name them off, and then me and Jared will go over a few that really disappointed us. First, we have Jaquavius Marks out of Mississippi State. Then we have Michael Mayer out of Notre Dame, tight end. Then we have Cole Turner, Nevada, tight end. Chris Rodriguez, running back out of Kentucky. Deshaun Corbin, Florida State, running back. Reese White, Coastal Carolina, running back. Jaden Daniels, Arizona State QB. John Mechie, wide receiver for Alabama. And Roderick Burns, wide receiver for North Texas. So, Jared, who were some of your biggest disappointments this weekend?
I feel like my angst with John Mechie is more just geared towards the fact that Bama just can't get a consistent receiver going. Because I have shares of Jameson Williams. I have shares of John Mechie. I even have shares of Slade Bolden. Like, they just can't get a single guy going every single week that is just like that clear number 1, and it's driving me nuts. In addition, I'm off the Jaden Daniels train. I know he's one of your guys, but there's just not like he's got the good groundwork and everything, but like I don't know, it's just not there. It's not there.
Yeah,
I've dropped him in almost
is,
all my leagues.
He's losing a little bit of his luster. I'm going to say that he doesn't really have the receivers for him to usually like work, because in the past he had an Ayuk, a Darby, and N'Keal Harry. Now, I'm not going to say that those guys carry Jaden Daniels. I think Jaden Daniels still has the talent, but I think the receivers that he has now are still very, very young and not used to this college football environment. So I won't give too much. I won't slight Jaden Daniels too much, but I am not impressed at what I've seen so much this season. Now, he can come back and, make a resurgence, if he wants to have another upset. It is the Pac-12. You never know what's going to happen after dark. So you never really know. But, yeah, I understand why. But I will say, I guess some of my disappointments, I'll hit on 3, but I'll combine 2. Michael Mayer and Cole Turner, 2 top tight ends. Honestly, they could be like, going into the season, Cole Turner was number 1
Just wrap up like most top tight ends this weekend, dude.
Yeah,
like
Greg Dulcich. Who else? Did Jalen Watermeyer even have a good day? I don't even know.
I'll be honest. I dropped Weidemeyer in the one league I had him in because they just wouldn't get work.
Yeah, and also you had
Trey
Zaldana
Berry.
out there.
Trey Berry had a
Yeah.
goose egg.
What
Payne
about
Durham.
McBride? Yeah.
Payne Durham had only like 3 points. Like it was a rough day for the top tight ends.
Yes. Tight ends just did not get used today. I don't know. Maybe we'd have to wait for National Tight End Day. You know how the NFL does it, but I really want tight ends to get more work, especially up at Notre Dame. Michael Mayer was like the focal point for that. It's probably that bright spot for Jack Cohn for a receiving option. But he seemed to find some other guys too, which I'm happy for. But also, I want Michael Mayer to get some work back because we've seen the potential and the talent that he has. Might as well just use him. I don't want him just to be, using the blocks. So,
absolutely.
But I'll talk about probably my biggest disappointment this weekend. I said biggest, whatever. Chris Rodriguez, Kentucky.
Y'all we're getting tired.
Yeah, I said biggest. Oh God. But yeah, Chris Rodriguez, running back for Kentucky, had a great day against Mizzou. He had like 3 touchdowns on the ground and 2 receiving touchdowns. It was something.
Xavier, he didn't have a good day. He was the running back 1 last week.
Yeah, and I was like, okay, it's no brainer. It's Chattanooga. I wasn't expecting another 5 touchdown or 4 touchdown game, but I was like, all right, he'll get some work, 100 yards, maybe a touchdown, and I'm fine. Just let me get out of it. Let me have a nice little day out of my fantasy and walk out clean. No, that the offense looked terrible. I really wish I could just berate the entire offense. Like the amount of hype that Will Levis was getting going into, finally clicking with that Kentucky offense, where they were like, oh man, he might be working his way into the NFL draft, maybe going up some boards and some rounds. And I was like, look, that.
Oh no, that got way out of hand way too quickly.
Yeah, I was like, look, I'm happy that Kentucky is showing a different style of play than ground and pound, even though that doesn't spell well for Chris Rodriguez. But I like what they were using him last week, where I was like, hey, he's still hitting the ground hard and still getting, and now he's getting receiving work. So use that. But against Chattanooga, they just kept trying to hit Wan'Dale Robinson and Ali a lot, and I'm just like, and then they wanted to use Smoke as well too, and I'm just like, I don't use your best player, give him the carries that he needs to be successful, and they barely escaped that game, where Chattanooga kept them on their heels, and they were slowly creeping back with field goals, and then they got a touchdown, and then Will Levis had to go hero ball and flex their SEC superiority, but it was an ugly win. I was very disappointed, and I'm really concerned because even I made the drastic decision to sit Chris Rodriguez for next week. Now I will probably go back and contemplate that and be like, hey, it's just one bad week. Let's put our guy back in. But I was very, very
Who are they playing this week?
It's a good question. I think they're playing an SEC opponent too. It might be, I'm not going to say Mississippi State for sure. But
it could be possible they were saving him for their matchup this week.
They're playing South Carolina. So considering what they did to Georgia this past weekend in the run game, I'm not going to say I'm not going to start him, but it's going to be considered. I'm going to have to put it under some attention and say, hey, maybe I don't start you because I have some better backs.
Nah, if I were you, I'd start him.
I probably will, but I'm facing you next week, so that's your pick, your poison.
You know what? I am so broken when it comes to facing you in home leagues.
I don't know. You're scary now. You have Bailey Zapp and
see, but okay. All right, this is how this podcast is gonna end, y'all.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how scary my teams are. It doesn't matter how bad. I literally our league is stacked. I literally doubled my opponent this weekend. I won 260 to 130. That does not matter. I'm going to score 130 points next week because either I've just psyched myself out or that's just my luck. And that always happens when I face Xavier. I don't understand it. It is some serious level of CFF voodoo that goes on with that kind of stuff. I don't get it. Yeah. So hopefully this weekend will be only the second time that I think I still only have 1 win against you.
You do.
It's
been 2 or 3 seasons now.
It's been a rough time for me, y'all. It's been really rough when it comes to faith. Because again, everybody else, I'm fine. Yeah. For some reason, Xavier is my demon. So that's what we're gonna. What'd you say?
We all have them. I finally beat mine and John last week. I was like, please, God, don't let me lose.
I forgot that. Okay, no, that's the other thing, y'all. I like Xavier will lose to everybody else in the league, but as soon as he faces me, for some reason, his team just finds the juice. It makes no sense. I will destroy everybody. He'll lose to everybody. But it's like as soon as I face him, it got what was it? God, it was like Ole Miss and Bama a couple years ago and everything, where it's just like no matter what, Ole Miss is going to find a way to beat Bama for some reason for like 2 or 3 years in a row. There, it was weird.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm getting on a massive rant way too long there. Y'all, thank you guys so much for listening tonight. Like I said earlier, please make sure you're following us on Twitter at CFF_Jared, and he is at CFF_Xavier. Please make sure you're following us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Please leave those 5-star reviews or any star reviews really that you really want to leave, because I enjoy reading them all regardless. If you have any tips for the show or anything like that, like things to make it better, please leave it down in the comments below on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe there as well. Hit that notification bell, all that good jazz. You guys know what you're doing over there. I believe that's about it. I think I hit all of our platforms. Xavier, anything else you want to add in here?
Nope. Thanks for listening. Like Jared said, we're looking forward to week 3. We'll have that preview coming soon. I guess we're gonna
start week 4.
Week 4. Oh God. See, that's how late it is. It's 12 and we're gonna have to either record in the morning or tomorrow. So either way.
We are not recording the preview tonight.
So
all righty, y'all. Appreciate y'all listening in. It's been an awesome week of college football. We're excited about next weekend. We're excited to bring you the content later this week with our week 4 preview and also our King's Cost to start discussion. Make sure you listen to that. Until then, see you guys and go win your leagues.